Hi, I'm Carolyn Kane. I've been coming to this place since 1975, and in the early 80s, Trevor Howsky retired. He had been here a pastor of this church for 27 years, and his new wife really leaned on him, I've been told, to retire, and they did, and they retired to Minneapolis. We needed a new minister, of course, and Trevor, before he left, picked the people for the search committee. He came up with 12 people, which is rather large for a search committee, but I think he really wanted a cross-section of the congregation. So we gathered, and every week we would get together and we would go over the resumes and profiles of candidates which had been sent to us from the national office. And anyone who's been on a search committee knows how daunting that job is on the search committee. Every week going through profiles and talking about them and reading profiles during the week and coming back and discussing. And it became obvious to us after several weeks that there was one that kept rising up to the top, figuratively, and that was of John Jeter, who at the time was sort of an interim at a church up in, I think he was in Hartford. His resume, his profile, was exemplary. He was outstanding, it would seem, in everything he did. And so we'd say, okay, he's good. We would put his profile on the side and we'd read some more profiles, and then we'd go back to John Jeter and say, yes, this guy is good, but he's not as good as John. And we'd read some more, and yes, she's very good, and she's a hopeful candidate. And then John Jeter's name would come up again. So as I was reading, of course, I began to hear some comments in my head, and I said to a friend of mine who was on the search committee, you know, my gaydar is telling me that John is gay. And she said, oh, I think so too. I said, okay, where do we go from here? So we talked it between just the two of us and decided that it was something that the search committee really should discuss. I was reluctant. As a gay person, I usually don't really talk about whether I'm gay or whether I'm not. If somebody asks me if I am, I always am truthful and say yes. But if it isn't part of the conversation, then I just keep quiet. I had gotten by with that, and gotten by, I'm using it specifically, because I didn't have any investment in it, just who I was and like that. So the next time we had a meeting of the search committee, I looked at my friend across the table and asked her, you know, with my eyes, should we go now? She gave me a nod, and we had been talking about what would happen in the congregation if John became our minister. And there were many questions, some really deep and interesting, others very shallow, which it was just a reflection of where people were on the search committee and what they knew. There were questions like, well, how is John going to react to the little kids? And are the kids in any danger? No, of course not. What's going to happen when John gives his sermons? What's going to happen? He's just going to give his sermons, and he was a good sermonizer. And then the question that really kind of blew up everything and one of the quieter members of the committee said, well, if he's gay, can we really believe what he has to say? I was kind of knocked back by that question. It just didn't seem to make any sense to me, but I realized, no, now is the time. So I said, well, yes. Do you think that the work of the search committee and the work that all of us have done here is less valid because I'm gay? And that was the first time I had ever, in a corporate setting, as it were, said that I am gay. And at that moment, I felt very good about it. I felt that I owned it, and that it was a kind of nudge to get the search committee going and maybe have some good stuff happen in our congregation, because we were stuck. We were really stuck. We knew the kind of candidate we wanted, and yet that person was gay. Ooh. After I made that proclamation, there was silence, dead silence. And I kind of waited, you know, a couple of beats, thinking to myself, oh, good grief, what have I done? I'd been kind of coasting. I hadn't had to claim who I was, because this church is what it is, and it just accepts. It's a very accepting and loving place, and I wasn't challenged at all. I know this is not about me, but I'm not the only one who was in that position. So after several beats went by, when I thought, well, I don't know, maybe I'm going to be sent out of town on a rail. I mean, who knows what's going to happen? It's kind of a swan dive into the abyss. But one by one, people in the search committee, although they were thoughtful and really thinking about what I said, I guess, one by one they began to say, no, that's fine. No, we wouldn't have any trouble seeing what he had to say. And one by one, people just kind of warmed up to the idea. Frankly, I don't remember what else happened after that in the meeting. I have no recollection, except at the very end, that there were some people who came up and gave me some very welcomed hugs and said that if there's anything more that I needed from the search committee, they would be very happy to comply. And we met the following week, and I thought, well, maybe the follow-up is going to be worse than the actual thing. But it turned out not to be at all. We struggled a little bit more with the gay thing, but people were asking questions and just, I think, trying to get used to the idea and knowing me in a different way. It was good. It was really good. We eventually called John. We asked him if he was gay, and he answered us truthfully, yes, that he was, but it wasn't something that he necessarily wanted it to be a subject of conversation. And he told us some horror stories, things that he had encountered in his young life. One of them was having to sleep with a baseball bat under his bed, which surprised us all. Eventually, the church, after some machinations and heated discussions, we called him. And it's often been said that he took us on that he came through this conversation, how does he word it? That he soared through this conversation, through this congregation like a meteor. And we just kind of grabbed onto the tail of this meteor or comet and sailed with him for about 5 years until John became too sick and had to leave. But this congregation, I can't say enough about it. It is so God-loving and warm. Sometimes I'd like to start all over again in this church and do things a little differently. But I'm glad the way it all turned out, and I've made some wonderful friends, and I have such respect and I can't think of another word, respect and love for so many people in this congregation who have stood up and said what they needed to say. And it's okay. I felt that it was the right thing to do, but that was that was my brain talking. My heart was pounding in my chest. I kept running out of air, so I kept gulping air. I mean, I was really quite anxious. And when there was no response or immediate response to my saying, do you think that the work of the search committee is in any way compromised because I'm gay? All I could think was, well, I can't unring that bell. And it's out there now, it's out of my hands. I didn't realize that at the beginning. But my therapist, when I was telling her this story, said, "You did what?" So, looking back at it, I can see that it did take more courage than I ever thought I had, and now my gaiety is just so much a part of me. I don't even think twice about it. It did, and we became the first church on Long Island, Congregational Church on Long Island, to become open and affirming, and I think only about the 7th or 8th in the entire country. So once again, this congregation was at the front of things, and we weren't after any kind of medals or anything like that. It was just the right thing to do at the right time.